a little bit of what we're going to go over today. First off, our introduction, which is going to include our research objectives and our statistics. Next, we'll dive into our literature review, which is going over our earning disparities and financial education. Then we'll be going through our survey idea, which includes our hypothesis and our variables. Then we'll be going through our survey plan, which goes over our types of questions we asked. Then to our data analysis, which goes through our errors, t-test, and chi-square tests. And lastly, our conclusion, which is going to go over our results and any questions. So for starters, I have a couple statistics for you guys. First off, 51% of college students are not confident in their chosen career path. This could be for a few reasons, but definitely not doing enough research before you choose a major is definitely one of them. Next, 9.24% is the increase in tuition costs from 2010 to 2022. With this vast increase rate, college students have to determine whether or not it's even worth it to pursue a degree that's going to end up costing them more than what their major might actually make them in the job market. Next, 2/3 of college students feel overwhelmed when selecting a major. So how many of you guys have changed your major? Okay, perfect. Because students have to do that research again just to see if they're going to end up making enough money to pay off those loans, if it's worth the investment in their field, but they also want to enjoy the major that they're in. And lastly, 69% of college students use money as a motivator for determining their major. Greatly said, you want to be able to purchase a house, you want to be able to buy a car and have a retirement plan, but you can't necessarily do that if your degree doesn't give you enough money. Which leads us into our main research objective, which is to analyze the relationship between selecting major and financial well-being.
Yeah, and now we'll be kind of diving into the literature review. So for the first topic is going to be earning disparities. As a reporter from CBS News says, performing arts majors are typically underemployed, and that may make securing a position in their chosen field kind of more challenging. And then for financial topics, it's while pursuing a business-related field, students typically learn management strategies relating to internal operations, marketing, accounting, as well as human resources and other key business topics. And then for the last one is value, as some students, as kind of Carly mentioned before, do not feel like there's value, or that there is value in majoring in something that does not have an obvious financial upside.
And so looking at financial well-being, what is it? So there's of course objective and subjective definitions. So looking at, is a person able to comfortably meet their financial obligations, comfortably able to prepare for their future financially, but then also just looking at how this correlates with their overall well-being.
Now I'm going to jump into our survey idea. So I'll start off with our hypotheses that were based off of our literature review. So the first one being that we believe business majors are going to have a higher financial well-being compared to other majors. And the second one kind of goes along with that. We believe business majors are going to be more likely to possess personal investment accounts. With that, we have our variables. We have two dependent variables and one independent variable. The independent variable being degree choice and our dependent being financial well-being and the possession of personal investment accounts, because those really depend on what major you have.
And so here's an example of some of the questions we use. This is just a Likert scale, and what that means is just how it measures level of agreement or disagreement to a statement. And then here we also use the nominal scale, and what that means is it categorizes data into in no specific order or ranking. And then here we also use the nominal scale once again, asking people what their major is, and I think we did a pretty great job including, just about all of them. We did have a write-in option at the bottom if they cannot see their degree program there, and we only got 3 write-ins. 2 of them were finance majors, so we just include that in the business category. And then 1 was theatrical design, and that was the one where we put into like another category.
All right, now we're going into our survey plan. We took a population of young adult consumers and then used the sample of current or past NMU students that are above 17 or below 27. For our survey structure, we started with a basic introduction. This is just overviewing what our survey contains, and then this is also where they consent to take the survey. Next is our eligibility. These are just if you're above 17 or below 27, and then if you're full-time or part-time NMU students. Next, we go into our financial well-being. This contains 12 questions, and we use the Melbourne Institute for that. Then it asks what the major choice is, and that's where they use the multiple choice to mark their major. Then investments, we use 1 question for that investment. And 3 demographic questions, which this is where we asked about their income, ethnicity, and their education. And then lastly, we did our email where this is where they signed up if they wanted to be part of the $25 Amazon gift card. For recruitment, we reached out to our friends, we asked random students in the hallway that we passed. We also posted on social medias like everyone for Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, and then we also asked professors to show QR codes before class.
Alright, I'm gonna be going over our data analysis. So we had to clean up our data. We did get 211 responses, but only 158 of them were actually completed. So we deleted the incomplete ones. We also ended up removing a couple of questions just because the responses were so varied. So our total score went from a 20 down to an 18. And we got rid of these 2 questions, which is my finances do not control my life, as well as the question about gift giving. They were just kind of confusing to the people that were taking our survey. And I'll also be going over our demographic. So primarily we had white people taking this survey, others at about 7%. Next we did income. So primarily most of our people that took our survey were at under $25,000. This makes sense considering most of us are full-time college students that can't handle working a full-time job. Maybe some of us are working a part-time job. We're thinking the other people might have accidentally put their parents' income, or maybe for some reason they're able to make a little bit more money, but primarily under $25,000 is exactly what we were predicting. And lastly, education. Most people selected the high school or GED option just because most of us have not also completed another degree before coming here. But that other category could be from an associate's degree or maybe they're in a master's program.
And so here we have the idea to look at other groups and what their strategies were, because as Cass said, we had the incentive of an Amazon gift card, and we were the only group here to have an incentive, so we kind of like had this hypothesis of, okay, then we're gonna get way more responses than others. But then we just kind of casually, briefly asked other groups, how many completed responses did you receive, and how did that, impact, and what kind of strategies and methods did you use? And so clearly, there's other groups that had higher numbers of completion than we did. So I think that, this kind of goes to our future research in a little bit we'll discuss. But I think we really depended on, okay, our incentives kind of going to carry us rather than, making a little bit more of an effort to go out and ask people to take it.
So now before we jump into the fun part, which is actually going over our results, I'm going to tell you guys how we calculated the financial well-being score for each of our participants. So we had 10 questions after we deleted the 2 that were kind of confusing to analyze financial well-being. And there were 5 options for those questions, so that gives you a perfect score of 50. But when we were putting our survey together, we didn't really think of this. So our more positive answers were correlated to a smaller response value. So to really kind of correct this, when we added up the score for everybody, we subtracted it from 60 to give them their score out of 50. It's a little bit confusing, but just for example, if somebody put a 1 for all of their answers, that would be like the best financial well-being on our score. That would add up to a total of 10, and then you subtract 60 minus 10 to get us our perfect score of 50.
Okay, next I'm going to kind of go over the t-test. So the good news for business majors, as you can see, the others are in the orange and the businesses in the blue. We business majors did have a higher mean average, and the y-axis kind of represents the p-values, which Lexi will again be going over next.
So before we jump into the specifics of our significance, I just kind of want to remind everybody on some statistical terms. I don't know the last time any of us have taken statistics classes. That's why I'm doing this. So a null hypothesis is stating that there's no difference between the 2 groups that you're talking about. An alternative hypothesis is saying yes, there is a difference between them. And going along with that, a one-sided hypothesis is stating that one's larger or smaller than the other. And a 2-sided hypothesis just saying, yeah, you believe they're different, but you don't necessarily know which one's higher or lower. So we can look at our data. Like Brandon said, business majors did have a higher on average score for financial well-being, and their answers varied a little bit. That's where you see a higher standard deviation. And their standard error and mean was higher. What the standard error really means with our 95% confidence interval, we're within plus or minus 1.019 of the true value of business majors. Same with other majors, we're within plus or minus 0.733. Moving on, we can look at a little bit more of our significance. We're ignoring the first 2 columns that talk about the Levine's test for equality of variances, because that's not talking about our significance in our type of research. What we are looking at is the one-sided p-value, the 0.002 and 0.003. Like I explained, a one-sided hypothesis ours, we believe business majors are gonna have a higher financial well-being. So that's why we're looking at those numbers. And they're less than 0.005, which is the number you look at for a 95% confidence interval. With that, we can say our data is significant, and going back to some of the more terms I use, we can reject the null hypothesis that there is no difference in favor of the alternative hypothesis that there is a difference.
Next, we're going to go into our chi-square test. This is where we ask the business students if they have investments or if they don't, and then we also ask the other major choices if they have investment accounts and if they don't. 41.7 students reported that they do have investment accounts, and 33.7 of the other majors reported that they do have investment accounts.
So now we're gonna kind of go into the conclusion and wrap this up now. And so we're gonna kind of compare two hypotheses again. So the first one is if students pursue a business-related program, then they will have a higher financial well-being. And the second one being if students are business majors, then they are more likely to have personal investment accounts. And now we can kind of go to the next slide and compare.
So basically going off of what Brandon just said, our data was statistically significant and both of our hypotheses were supported with positive relationships, and there was a higher average in both categories.
So looking at future research of what we would change in the future or kind of what we wish we did, is we really wish we rephrased the question about household income, because I think a lot of our responses kind of thought that as their parents in that household, and we should have said, this is your individual, what you're doing, what you're making. And then we wish we asked about the source of their financial knowledge and kind of how that impacted their responses, because maybe they took a finance class in high school, but is that more of like you want to prepare, or is that more of, this is the degree you're going into and you have interest in it. And then kind of what I talked about earlier is just asking more about specific information from other groups. It seems like overall that groups really made an effort to just kind of reach out to their different clubs, sports, friends. That seemed to be the majority of it. And I think that would lead to an increase in the sample size, which we had more of. And that's what we got for you. Are there any questions?